That's stressful to always perform. And it's especially stressful when you start to falter sometimes. I was like, these are all just excuses. If you're not sure that you can be fully consumed by it, like, I would say stay away from it.
Photographer of the year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Shellda podcast, where I've got just one of the legends in paintball. You don't call yourself a founding member of Houston Heat, but like you've been with them literally forever at this point. I've got Ryan Moorhead. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. I always try to live life from the positive side of things and move on from there. But I really appreciate that intro. Just love doing this, love being part of this industry, and excited to be on your show because I've been listening to a lot of yours lately, but really since you started it, and really like what you've done with it. And I think the one thing you have way above me to start with is you have such a calm, soothing voice that it does make it easy to listen to. But, it calms your listeners, and it also, I think, lets the guests open up a lot easier to get a little more insight from them. So, I appreciate you having me on. No matter how long I've been in the sport, this is like my 23rd year pro, but every little opportunity I get to do anything or, get to know someone more, I like to take advantage of that.
Yeah, thank you for the kudos. And, I've heard that a lot of like, oh, you've got such this calm, soothing voice. And like someone was like, hey, you should do like bedtime stories. It's like, maybe that's the next thing I'll do, like paintball bedtime stories for kids,
I was going to say, I didn't know if that sounded creepy at first when they told you.
No.
Nah.
I mean, I think Maddie Marshall actually said it. And I'm like, oh, okay, if Maddie's saying that, then like there's got to be some validation there. But
for
you,
sure.
sir, you've got a pretty awesome podcast voice yourself, which we're going to dive into here in a little bit.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's one of those things you hate listening to your own voice, sometimes. So.
Yeah, for sure. I totally get that. Well, hey, before we dive into all these questions to learn about you and the podcast, I've got some amazing sponsors that I got to give a huge shout out to. Hormesis has been on, as you know, since day one. And actually this shirt, Alex sent me a box of goodies a week or so ago from that new spring collection they have. And like, I can't get enough of this stuff. Yeah. Like it's so soft. It's perfect for the summer, perfect for the heat that we're getting into. So if you're going to NXL this weekend, absolutely drop by the booth and pick up some stuff because it's going to go quick. And then the second sponsor I picked up just a few weeks ago, like literally hot off the presses, Pro DNA, Callie and ZP and those guys, they were so excited to jump on board. And it's a beautiful partnership, right? And they sent their new backpack they have. It's been like all over the internet. Like everyone's been talking about it. I can't wait to bring it to the field this weekend. It'll be my first time traveling with it. So like it's literally the perfect size to slide under the seat on the plane. I don't have to worry about putting stuff overhead. And the cool thing about it is you can buy that from my other sponsor, bfpgear.com, with Junior and Gina Brown. So like it's so cool how it all just kind of marries together. So
I think that's awesome. What's really unique about like paintball sponsors is it's not like a nameless, faceless corporation person behind it. Like you get to know the people. So as you're going through them, like, none of those people are my sponsors, but like I have such good individual relationships with them. Like I still get a smile on my face and I want them to succeed. I don't want to, I don't worry about people chopping up portions of a little pie. You want to grow the pie and let everyone, eat. So awesome sponsors. And I think it's awesome that, you're also able to have like actual real personal relationships with.
Hey, super quick before we dive into this podcast, there's been something on my mind lately. Did you know that nearly 50% of you still are not subscribed to this podcast? If you've been enjoying any of the shows that you've seen so far, the free and simple way to show your support is by simply hitting that subscribe button. And then my commitment to you is to continue bringing on guests each and every week, diving into the stories that are untold, the vulnerabilities, and really getting a look into some of the icons of our sport. Thank you so much. Back to the show. Yeah, and that's the most important thing from what I've learned in paintball is like just the relationships, right? Like sponsors are going to come and go, like teams are going to pick up new sponsors throughout the years. And so you're going to essentially work with everybody at some point. Mm-hmm. And if you have those incredible relationships, like that's what's going to keep you going throughout the whole entire sport. And as you know, for the last 23 years for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and before that, before I was even pro, and it's one of those things when I was younger and just getting into it, I just appreciated the friendships and all that I made, and I didn't realize like the networking opportunities that also is. It's not taking advantage of the situations. It's just making use of what you're given as opportunity, and everyone's willingness to help each other, and the long-term friendships, and like I said, networking opportunities and business opportunities that get produced from that are pretty unique to anything I've seen in other industries.
Yeah, I'm glad you found that early. It actually, I'm the opposite. Like, it took me until I got back into the sport, like with the photography
Yeah.
side, to like really appreciate that. I think when I was playing, it was all about, like showing off and like all the cool gear I was wearing. And I didn't care, about the relationships other than like
Yeah.
folks on my team. But now that I'm in it and I'm much older, I got some gray hairs to show for it. It's all about the people.
Yeah.
And, like now that I'm working with JT for my personal brand, I left Maxt Sportswear last year with Charles. But like even just today, like I got a text message from him and like we were just checking in with each other. And
Yeah.
so it's, even though you're
So
coming and
important.
going, like yeah.
It's so important not to burn bridges in paintball too. People forget
Yeah.
when you have a small community. I mean, it's always important to be a good person. That's just
Yeah.
morally how you should be. But
Yeah.
outside of that, in paintball or any small community or industry that you're working inside of, it's exponentially more important because
Yeah.
not only do those people interact and talk, and your reputation will follow you, but besides for that, it's your opportunities decrease with every bridge you burn, and the opportunities aren't limitless.
Yeah, for sure. And like the when you do burn the bridges, with being in such a small community that we are, like the word gets out so fast. Like people talk so quick. So it's hard to rebuild that. But hey, let's jump into I I'm so happy that you started the podcast. And for those that don't know, you're the co-host, right, of the Rowdy Ones podcast, which is just a great name. Like when I heard of it, I'm like, oh, that just fits like so well. So tell me about that.
No, I appreciate that. As far as the name goes, it's tricky coming up with a name because you come up with some good ones and then they're taken. It's like doing all the steps back over and over again. And the Rowdy Ones, we didn't want it to necessarily have just the paintball name because eventually we want to grow to a lot more like a bigger verse of guests. But outside of that, like I think it's kind of encapsulate like my life and my co-host Hal's life as well. He wasn't a professional paintball player, but he grew up doing a lot of pretty adrenaline junky things as well. He was a base jumper and a skydiver for a long time. He was a professional wakeboarder for a while as well. So it kind of just encompasses that life, that like always be a child life, like be rowdy, like make those decisions. And obviously when you grow up, like you're more carefully rowdy, and your definition of that changes, but it does mold. It doesn't go away. You're still always yourself. You just have, more responsibilities. So to start that podcast, I listen to a lot of podcasts, probably more than music or anything, definitely more than music. I'm kind of musically inept, but outside of that, like I do listen to a lot of podcasts because I enjoy good conversations. I enjoy getting other people's perspectives on things. I've been listening to podcasts since like even like Joe Rogan, like since his was like in his like basement,
Oh, gee,
like,
wow.
like when there wasn't many podcasts out there, so you were searching for them. And I always kind of wanted to start one. It's tricky, I've recently, I'll say like married, but like, the last 6 years plus the traveling, the paintball, post COVID, it's been a less, not playing in the European League all the time, or not going to Asia and South America, and not traveling as much. But still, even just playing in the US leagues, it's a huge time commitment, between all the practices, all the time away, the non-team practices, events, gone 2 weeks at a time. So to start a podcast, I was like selfish in some ways, where I was like, I would like to do it, but I don't know if I do have the time. I'm trying to do all these things, or I want to use my time other places. And then I kind of put it off a little more because like in some ways I thought like, it's kind of getting oversaturated.
Yeah.
And I was like, these are all just excuses, because in the end of it, if I want to do it and put it out there, it can start one way and I can keep building. There's always learning curves, and you always need to improve on it. But if I'm enjoying it, then that'll come through, and you'll get like an earnest, true group of viewers or the community built around that. And if you don't, then you can keep it like changing it. And then if it goes outside the realm of what you want to do anymore, you could stop.
Yeah.
And I don't want to stop. So I want to try to make it work. And I don't care, the time frame it has to work on. So that kind of like pushed me a little more to it. But I give really all the credit to House Spears. And, a lot of the paintball community probably doesn't know him, but he played paintball a long time ago, never on like any high ranking teams or anything like that. But he was just a paintball patron. And he got involved with Houston Heat and our pit crew at the Dallas Invitational a few years ago. And from there, just grew really good relationships with a lot of us. And now he's like, comes to every event as the pit crew. This year, he took over our Houston Heat social media accounts, at least on Instagram. Wow. So like last year, if you look, like we had one post all the year, and we didn't have someone to do it, even though
we talked about that, you and I.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and like for me, like I don't have the content to put out. I'm not like a content creator. And I guess with podcasts I am, but like, not social media posts every day for things. If I don't have the photos, things like that. And Hal took it on and the industry has been great in giving it back and allowing us to have content. And now he's, able to travel a little more with the team and get some of his own. And we're slowly building that. And, we're probably on pace to have 500 posts this year from one the year before. So that's a huge bell curve that, we kind of jumped and skipped. And I think it's important because we try so hard to win, but winning isn't the only way you have to give back to your fans and your supporters. Yeah. You kind of have to open yourself up to them and at least, so they can see a window into what you're actually doing. You're never going to get the full story, but, just snippets and they appreciate that so much. So, selfishly a lot too, it's like, well, I don't really want to share this on social media. Like at the beginning, I liked keeping my social media pretty personal, like more of like a yearbook for me to look back on and see like my travels and pictures. And then, sponsor requirements or this or that, it turns into just like paintball. Yeah. And then it's what it's expected of. And yeah, you can separate them and stuff, but when you build one up so much, it's just there's no great answer for it. But once it is more that, it's like, well, paintball is, 90% of my life. So is it bad to show that? And it's not like you're showing everything or it takes that much time. And even if it makes it, 5% worse for you or 10% worse in the moment, to not like be living in the moment, to be taken out of it a little bit. Like if you're giving back 1% to a few people, that makes up for that. So I did want to, start it for that reason. And Hal was, his name's House Spears, so I'll be corny and I'll say he spearheaded it, but he really did. He said, hey, I want to start a podcast. I'm going to do it regardless. Like, I'd like you to be involved if you want. And he'll say, like, I was instantly like, yes. But I thought about it and I wanted to make sure I could invest enough time in it. And I know with podcasts, you really do have to be consistent if you want growth and stuff. Yeah. And the schedule's tricky because like I said, I'm gone a lot of times and our podcast was kind of originally focused around like letting our supporters see more inside of our team. Yeah. So not just, those little snippets that he gets to put on Instagram, but actually hear our thought process that goes behind it. Because I think results and what people do and what you see of them is important, but like why someone makes a decision to me is more important than the decision they made. I like to get the inner workings of people's brains and see how they think. So you can't get that without like a podcast. So that's, kind of how it organically grew. So like I said, we want to give more about back that from the team. And then the more we thought about it, we'll be filming our 10th episode tomorrow with Alex Frey. So one of your great sponsors, one of my favorite people in paintball. He's just such a kind heart. And he's always, so busy with so many different projects, trying to get back to the sport and, doing it all without ever complaining. Like, I think I could actually like count the amount of times that I've heard him complain on one hand, and I've known him for, since 2000. So it's an incredible human, but it's our 10th episode. And, a lot of podcasts don't even make it that long. And, we're just getting started and we're, we have a lot of room to grow and a lot of things we want to add and, make work with it. But right now, we're able to do it within our schedules. I decided like, I can, regardless if we have to film a couple, and stack them up or because originally I was like, I'll do like 2 a month and you can get someone else to co-host it. But I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'll be all in and do it as much as I can. So
Yeah.
really
So
excited.
cool.
It's been fun so far. And, it's hard at the beginning because you almost feel bad for having guests on, or at least I did, because it's like, man, you're not going to get enough views to really make this worth your time.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me not to think that way, because that's not really what's important. And if it is important, like, I probably wouldn't have wanted that guest on anyway. What I'm using the beginning for is, just getting an opportunity and a chance to sit down with people that I respect, that I look up to, that I want to learn more about, or people that I already know, and have a long form conversation. Because a lot of times, like, even though I've had these, decades long relationships with people, the conversations still are, 10, 15 minutes at a time, if you're lucky, outside of maybe like, a night at the bar after the tournament's over or something, if people stayed around. And now you're like, you can't have like a super long conversation with everyone. Like, oops, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm in my garage until I get my office set up for this.
I love
and
it.
I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands. but yeah, where was I? Oh, so you just don't get the amount of conversation. So even without the viewership, like, I had every one I get off, I'm like, man, that was good. Like, even if people don't enjoy it, like, I enjoyed having that conversation and getting to talk about it. And when you have these forced conversations where, no one has their phones around, you don't have anything else distracting you, you get, a lot more detail and in depth and like true persona of someone. And that's cool to have for people. So even if there's not like a ton of viewers, like right at the beginning, eventually it'll grow. And that's conversation's still there. That didn't change. That's what the people felt, what the people think. And it's, true. So eventually, you hope to grow it. I don't care about like the monetization of it yet. Yeah, obviously it'd be great because it is a big time investment, but it's what a small part that I can do to give back. And like I said, like, it doesn't matter if I would rather it grow so that there can be more viewers, so more people can go back and listen to those conversations and hopefully get something out of it, whether that's enjoyment or a little life lesson, or, you disagree with it completely, but you understand that that's a different way that someone's seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many cool things about doing a podcast. And the nice thing about like doing it on YouTube, like what you guys are doing, is that's evergreen content. It's like, that'll stay there. Right. Like, I always have my analytics up and I have it here on the other screen. And I mean, I'm scrolling down and people are still like within the last 48 hours are watching episodes from months ago.
Yeah.
Right. It's like they'll find something, they'll like what you're doing, and then they'll go back and like, oh, I want to see what else like Ryan's doing.
Well, that's exactly what I've done with podcasts too. So to not think of that faster is surprising to me, because it's like how I treat them. Like, you find a new podcast, if you really like it, you'll go back at first and just like, cherry pick certain guests out or certain these. And if you continue liking it after that, it's like, no, I like the flow of this and the way this podcast is done. And now you'll listen to anyone, and now you get to experience new people and create new fandom of things, and then find new entertainment, avenues from that. So that's why I find a lot of times it's the ones, like the people that I was least expecting to enjoy on a podcast, that I really get the most out of.
Yeah, I've gone through that same thing. And I've also really enjoyed, like, if there's a host or something that I like, I'll go back and watch the old episodes. And then it's not only cool just being a fan of, their guests, but like also seeing how the host grows and changes throughout. Because you can start to see like, oh, they've implemented this, or they're changing something here. And so you can see where like they put themselves out and they try something new as well. I do want to jump back a little bit because you touched on a bunch of gold there, and I want to make sure we talk about it. So Hal specifically, like, what an incredible, that right there is an incredible story on its own, of you've got just a fan of the game and put himself out there by just getting into the pits, which some people like kind of downplay that role. But like, if you can be in the pits of a pro team, and if you're consistent, like, you build so many incredible relationships just from those small weekends. And then to look at where he is now within a few years, like has a podcast with probably one of his favorite players at some point, running a social media account for the team. Like, that's insane. It's like, his story is so cool of, if you want something so bad, like, go after it.
Yeah, it is really cool. And like our last episode, we had a duck hunter named Billy Campbell, who him and his friend, they have like Dr. Duck, and they're like some of the biggest names in duck hunting. I'm not a duck hunter, so I didn't know about them before, researching and getting the conversation with them. But for Hal, that's like one of the things he loves. So within like a period of 2 years, he's met two people that have like, kind of have leads in the industry, separate industries that he loves. And now he's on a podcast hosting with both of them talking. Like
It's
that's,
wild.
that's crazy. It's the world small, or at least
Yeah.
you can make it small.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Like, I've had, now that I'm doing this, like, you, for example, you, Oliver, Ryan, like all the guys on my walls that I've had my whole entire life, like I put you guys all on pedestals, right? Like you're untouchables. But like now being in the sea, I'm realizing like you're just a person. You're just like you and I. Like we go to bed, we pick our nose, like we do all the things that people just do. And when you look at somebody that way, like that's when the real conversations come out, is when you don't have that stardom and you're afraid to like go up and talk to somebody. There's just something so beautiful about it. And I love what you guys are doing with it too, because the first few episodes I watched, I think it was you, Ronnie, and Jackson. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I get to now know the new team, right? Because like obviously Houston Heat went through a whole change. And so you're giving an inside look into that. And for fans of any sport, whether it's paintball, football, or baseball, like you get to see the on the field action. But I think everybody craves that off the field, like they connect with the player and they want to know more about what's going on. And so for you guys to do that, like I think you'll see the Houston Heat brand, because it is a brand, will just explode even more in the next few years.
Yeah, I hope so. Because, the brand and the team and the Smiths have given so much to me that it'd be nice to help them in some way else other than on the field. And
what is it taught you about like you as a person, like now being in the seat of being a podcast host? Because it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot, but I've honestly been on
Enough of them.
fair amount of podcasts before as a guest and had a lot of long-winded conversations that I kind of knew what I was getting into beforehand. So I don't know if it's taught me too much. I guess it has at some extent. I think I'm too long-winded sometimes. And it also helped me realize that like sometimes if you have something to object in and say, and it seems important to you, but the moments pass, like it's important to let that go. And if it gets brought up some other time, you have something to add to a story, but you don't always have to be the one adding to it. And that's hard, because it's not like you think you're right is something. You just have like, oh, I have like, a little detail to add that I think can make this story better or bring more meaning out of it. But it's all about timing, and you'd give other people that equal or maybe a step more in their footing to get to express themselves over just doing it yourself.
Yeah, that's I know exactly what you're saying, because I think for most of my life I was that person in conversations where like you'd be talking and I'd already be thinking about what my response is, and I'd be like, ooh, and like I'd want to add it, probably for like just validating me, and like I needed that validation. But doing this podcast is help me stay more present in conversations. And like, even if I have that feeling like, ooh, I could add something, like I'll remain quiet and listen for the full picture. And sometimes you're right. Like that moment's pass and like, cool, let's let that be. And that's translated to my career as well. Like when I'm at work, my 9 to 5, I'm noticing I'm more present with, my coworkers, and that's just helped kind of grow that part of my life too.
Yeah. And outside of the business world, it really helps on a team setting too. So it is huge for sports. Everyone needs to feel heard and listened to and appreciated. And then they'll, reciprocate that back to you. So without that, and it's still hard because everyone's brains work so much differently. My brain is just very active. It's always thinking about multiple things at once and doing things, and not everyone's like that. So if you're not like that and you see someone doing it, you might think it's, rudeness or this or that, but sometimes it's just the way their brain works, and they're not trying to, but they might not even notice what they're doing at the moment. They might think back later and be like, I shouldn't have done that. Or, you look at famous people, like I think the biggest example of it I've ever seen is like Bert Kreischer. I don't know if you've ever listened to any of his like comedy or his podcast, but like, I mean, he's the prime example of that. He's not a bad person. He doesn't care, but he wants to add his spin to every story and every guest, and he overtalks a lot of people because of that, and he knows it, but it's still hard for him to change it. And it's not because he's a jerk, it's just how his brain works.
Yeah, it's almost this weird thing. Like you'll see with Bert, like he'll start talking, he'll get excited, and you see like the kind of the, oh shit, like I shouldn't have done that, and then you start to talk yourself out of it, kind of.
Yeah.
Speaking of real life, we were talking about like how we can use podcasting in helping our personal life. What do you do for your 9 to 5 job, like in between NXL events?
Yeah, I work at DLX, and I'm in product development, research and development, product testing, some quality control here and there, like kind of a jack of all trades and master of none. I get involved with the marketing strategies with Adam, or making videos, or I do a little bit of everything. Could be, researching materials, or, getting a new rev of a part and trying to figure out ways to improve it or ways to break it. So in a lot of ways, like, I'm a mediator between our great engineering team and the end users.
Yeah.
But I'm also, a player that has had, so much. I've seen like every iteration of guns been in my hands, played with since like the electronic guns came out. So I have a pretty strong grasp of the market as well. And, I do have I have a marketing degree. I would say like I don't use it for my job, but I do. And you use it for, your personal branding. You use it for your job in different aspects. You might not have to get hired as a marketer to actually use things like that. So I do a little bit of everything there, but it's kind of unique. I've only ever really worked for them and played paintball, because I got on the All Americans too, like as I could start working, like at 15.
Wow.
And like Smart Parts was, 15 minutes from my house back then, like the house I grew up in.
Yeah.
So like when I first started playing paintball, like I didn't really know about the professional side or the All Americans. I just knew I loved it and wanted to play as much as I could, whether that's like, in fields we made behind our houses, and like being as resourceful as 12-year-old kids can be to make enough, money to get a few paintballs and play around with, And so like my first job was actually at Smart Parts. I worked in the assembly department for like maybe a half a year. I was playing on the All Americans too at that time. My paintball career progressed before Smart Parts went bankrupt. I was the manager of the tech department, probably had like, 8 to 12 people under me at any given time. And then when that went bankrupt, I went back to school and finished my degree and started. I've also been lucky in paintball to always be, get rewarded for my effort that I've put in and played on, great organizations who have taken care of their players. So I've always been able to, make things work, because in the paintball industry, you don't always get paid, I think, market worth, but it gives you a lot of other intangible benefits, from like, unlimited time off for paintball events and to better yourself in what you do, to like the relationships and the networking you built, and the ability to kind of on the job train without the experience in the first place and end up learning a lot of different things. You see, and most of the major companies now have, people in really high roles who started out as paintball players. And I don't know many other industries that are like that. So I didn't work there for a while. I was focused on playing and going back to school. I'd go in and help when and where I could when it came back, when DLX came back, and there was something that I could give input in, or I thought my time would be well worth it. I'd go in, but I was living, in downtown Pittsburgh then. So the factory was an hour and a half away. So I wasn't like working there every day. And in a lot of those years, I was playing maybe 25, 26 events a year, plus, some clinics and things. There was times, yeah, I mean, you're always gone, Then there was sometimes when like the Millennium was directly after the PSP at the time, like we'd be gone a month straight. And then we'd try to, take a little trip, and then we'd have a 7-man event. So there was times that, I'm gone 4 to 6 weeks at a time. So, you're sacrificing all the other things, having outside relationships, whether friends or trying to grow a family or your own family that you have. It's like, it's a lot of sacrifice, and you might not be getting rewarded monetarily, but there's so many other things that you're getting back with it that, I've been blessed, but I've also, put myself in positions to always be involved in this industry. And that's really tricky too, because if you're the kind of person that can get burnt out of something, you don't want to work in the industry that you love. As crazy as that is to say, because the last thing you want to do is like hate what you love.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to hate work, or to like kind of resent the time it takes away from you, because in the long run, it is, more than a third of your life, like every day. And it's tricky to always be positive about that. So it's like, if you're not sure that you can be fully consumed by it, like, I would say stay away from it. It doesn't matter if we're talking paintball or any other industry. Like, if you don't like truly love it, and you could get like burnout from it, then you should stay away from it and allow your retreat and your vacation and your time of enjoyment separate from work. And then some people need to do that and some people not. From a very young age, I have had a passion and an addiction for paintball that really has never dwindled. So I've been lucky to stay in it and not really resent that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of pros that have come on this. They say the word addiction, and like it's always associated with something bad, right? But like you being addicted to the sport has turned into literally your life's work.
Yeah, I use the term addiction more instead of like something bad. It's just something that you need, not something that you want, right?
Yeah,
it's something
like
that you wouldn't be the same without.
Yeah, I know that to a T, because when I left paintball, I don't know, when I was in college, to do like the whole life thing that everybody does, I just kept trying to find that fill. Like nothing would fill paintball. I tried video games, I tried streaming, I got huge into disc golf, and like it just nothing fulfilled paintball.
Yeah, sports in general are so much like that, and paintball is so intricate, and there's so many moving pieces at any one time. It's even like easier to get like absorbed by it, in my opinion. But all sports are like that. I mean, once you quit playing competitively, if you were playing like soccer or baseball or basketball, there's some men's leagues that you can kind of do, but football for certain, like it was my favorite sport to play growing up. But it's like, I knew as soon as I didn't play competitively, like that last game that I played competitively, I never get to play the game I loved a lot. Like there might be a flag version I could play or go out and mess around, but that's such a bastardized version of the game that it's not the game. So paintball's that way for sure, but all competition is, and it's competitive people that everyone has that competitiveness in them. I believe if they find something that they care enough about, whether that's, work or sports or anything, but everyone has that. But losing that is what athletes have to deal with all the time, because it does go away eventually. Like no one makes it last forever. Like growing up, like I don't watch much baseball. I don't like that baseball that much, but like Nolan Ryan was my favorite player. And he was a pitcher that pitched over 100-mile-an-hour fastballs in 3 different decades. Like started late in the 60s, the 70s. It was 4 decades because he ended in the early 90s. So, it sounds like 40 years, but it really only has to be 23. But that's still like an incredible stat. But even for him, it's like it goes away. And then like I think he bought into some of the ownership of, is it the Houston? I don't know which,
the Rangers, isn't it?
The Rangers, yeah. So he has the Rangers, and I know, like, I guess when he first started being an owner, I guess a lot of the pitchers got mad about it because he would go down and be like, "What do you mean you can't pitch 200 balls in practice and then go out and play 3 days later and stuff?" Like, it's not like that. Like, you are a freak. Like, everyone has their own natural abilities too. And you have to, kind of balance the effort you put in plus your natural abilities for peak performance and longevity, because you could hurt yourself physically or tax yourself mentally to the point where you're over it. And that's why I think so many careers do fall short in any sport. So sometimes it's, degrading of the physical abilities, but in almost all sports, it's more mental than it is physical, because you already had the physical gifts to get into that sport, right? So you don't lose those like you don't drop off a cliff unless there's an injury. And the little things you can gain mentally can make up for your physical deficits you get as you age. And I think like playing sports, especially, like, man, they help you keep young, because it's twofold in my opinion. For one, it really is the objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Like your bodies are resilient. So the more you abuse it in one particular way, the more your body is prepared to heal itself and protect itself in those ways. So it's like, I could do this and be fine, go do something else And like if I go bowling for like 2 games, my arm would be sore. And it's like, oh, that's weird. Like this fat turd could bowl for all night and it's not a problem. Well, his body's used to that.
Yeah.
And paintball is so unique because it's, we're doing a lot of really quick reaction time, but also like tiny sprints. So it's all explosive. It's a lot of flexibility. It's a lot of explosive power, and it's constantly mentally taxing. So if you keep putting your body through that grind of that, then eventually it's just more and more prepared for that. So if you stop that too, like you will degrade faster. So I believe like if you can stave off injuries and stay healthy and take care of yourself, then actually doing the physical difficult things keeps you younger. But on the mental side too, I think like there's 2 kinds of stress, bad stress and good stress. It sounds weird because they both are stress inducing. But good stress, like bad stress, ages you so fast and just mentally wears you out. But good stress, like I think that keeps you young too and keeps your body going more.
For sure.
Like I have had that conversation with my wife before and stuff. Like she works in, the medical field. She's a respiratory therapist that worked at a children's hospital forever, deals with a lot of like bad, stressful situations. And she was like, it must be nice to like, work without like that stress. And she didn't mean it in a bad way, but like the way I took it, like I was like, it's nice to do something I love. Yes. But the stress is there, and it's kind of a unique stress because like in any good team, it should be a true meritocracy, right? So you're always under the constant stress of improving, of being good enough to be around, of being good enough to help. It's not just about staying, it's about like being a positive asset to your team to every point to do that. So it's like and like always having people like nipping at your buds, dreaming to replace you, right? Yeah. Like that's life at the top of any sport. You have
totally
like, a couple hundred people at the very top, and then it just pyramids down, and everyone would love to be where you're at. So you have to stay ahead of the curve. And that's stressful to always perform. And it's especially stressful when you start to falter sometimes, because then you can lose confidence, and confidence is so important for your mind to be able to work the way it should work in a moment, because things are happening in a split second and you shouldn't really be thinking about them and thinking about the best solution. You should be reacting to it based on your mind's rebound memory and your body's reaction time, and trust all of your experience and your years of training to like make the right decision. It's kind of like throwing a ball in that aspect. Like if I'm going to throw a ball 40 feet to you and you want to catch it, I don't think of the trajectory that I have to do and the force velocity and all the different things that go into it. Your body knows how to do that.
It just reacts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, man, you're just like spitting out so much gold. I've thought about that a lot the past few weeks because when I had Chris on, he talked about like that switch that you go through. Chris Lasoy, you talked about that switch that you go through stepping on the field. And then Meter, I asked him, I was like, hey, why do you still do this? And he was like, when you get to the highest level, it just becomes all about your mind. Mm-hmm. And it's so crazy that we've got people on the pro field now that are, isn't that kid from the Hurricanes like 16, 17, or 18, I think?
Somewhere in there.
And then we've got guys, all the way up to, 40s, right? And so like, it can't just be athleticism. Like it's got to be something up here. And it's just that muscle that keep sharpening.
Yeah. I think right now we're in a really unique time of paintball because I think we do have, a couple handfuls of people that have had like longer than Tom Brady, not only longevity, but peak longevity, been at the top of the game for so long. And I think there's so many things that have to align for that to happen. Yeah. That it's almost super uncommon, especially for us when we grow up. Like even now, like the dream is to eventually make it one day where it is like a major sport where people can make life-changing money. Sure. But outside of that, it's like I've seen, tens of thousands of players come in and out and been gone. But like, so you might look around and be like, oh, you have Alex and Ryan and Yosh and players like me and Thomas Taylor, Jason, were people that have been around 20 plus years. And then the next group has been around, 15 to 18 years. But those are the people that had just outlasted it. And we grew up in such a unique time in paintball that we had to kind of changed the way we played and learned to adapt to so many different formats, and
Yeah.
the game's evolution. So it wasn't like we just came in and played one style and then our careers were over. So it's like we've gotten all these, bricks that we got to add and strengthen our repertoire with that. And you had, so I just think it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that there's this many now, but I think it's like a combined factor of like growing up through all those different eras, having each other to play against and to better ourselves against, and doing it because obviously we truly loved it and not just for the monetary gain.
Yeah.
And then some of that eventually came back, but still nothing like other athletes have.
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody who's, let's say there's we'll call it a young Ryan Moorhead, right? Like a young 15, 16-year-old listening to this podcast, and they're hearing you, and you've made your career out of playing paintball, right? You're in the industry, you're working for one of the top brands in the world, working on products that we don't even know about yet, I'm sure.
Always.
Playing for a pro team. What advice would you give to somebody who's looking to do what you're doing, to like make paintball their living?
Yeah, I guess first off, I'd say don't be afraid to take chances. That's on and off the field. You have to be willing to fail in order to have better successes. And you have to, mitigate those failures and make sure they're not repeated. But like, you have to be willing to take chances.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you really do have to need it, not just want it, because like want of something is easy to replace. Like I want, this to happen, but am I willing to put in the effort to do it? Or when this came along and it made it slightly harder, does that put me off on the tangent? So you do have to truly need it. So like, you have to be pretty introspective and look deep down inside, and not, you don't have to do this day one, like, right. You're building up your career, you're seeing it, and every, new opportunity you have or decision that you have to make, which way your life to go, just weigh them against themselves and make the best decision for you. Because I do truly think like the most important thing is there's no set path for you. So as long as you're happy, like, make yourself happy first, and you'll figure out a way to make that work. And if you can't, then you can choose to, move on from that and attack something from a different avenue. But until you actually fail at something, don't let worry lead to failure. Don't let your inaction, and just don't believe that you're going to fail, so you never attempt to do it.
Yeah,
so if
you're really talking yourself out of it.
Yeah. So if you really need something, dive in the deep end, take the chances and see where it leads you. And you're going to have other opportunities in life. And you're presented with so many opportunities daily, and they're always changing. It's just, you have to see where it goes. And then when it's time for you to leave, and if you don't care about it as much, then you'll know that too. So just make the best decision for you. And if in the end, you truly are the person, that me, when I was a little kid, like fell in love with this, didn't know I could make it my life, but like the more and more I got into it and the further I got in it, like wanted to do that. And I stayed with it and kept giving it chances. And I passed up a lot of opportunities that, would have behooved me in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But life's about sacrifices. So it's like, you have to make some sacrifices to get something else that you want. You can't have everything the way you want it when you want it.
Yeah, I've heard that from so many people that have been on the show. Like when I had Jonah, John Rose on, he mentioned about being in college, and he was like, I had that decision of like, if I'm going to do this, I have to go all in on it. And then Matt the Gym Rat, obviously he's a content machine, right? Like he got laid off from his job when he was I think just out of college, and he made the decision like, I'm going all in on this. And the people that do that, like when you're betting against yourself, when there is really no other option, like I feel like it just unlocks something in your brain where like, this is it. Like I have to do this.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't guarantee success though, because you only hear the good. You only hear the good stories. You only hear the people that worked out for. Totally. And with every person that worked out for, a lot of others failed in doing it, but at least they don't have to live with wondering if it would have worked.
Yeah, that's it right there, right? It's that fear, and that's one of my biggest things that I don't want to live with. And I've talked about it on some of my earlier shows, is one of my like taglines or mottos for me personally, and it's kind of like turned into my brand, is live your legacy. And it'll be coming out in, I think it'll be coming out in the article in the Great American Paintball in the next edition, where I talk about that of, there's someone in my family who's an older person, and he always says like, man, I wish I was able to do this when I was your age, or I wish I took these opportunities. And like, I've heard that so much in my life, but like, I do not want that when I'm that age. Like, I want to look back and be like, no, I'm glad I took that risk, or I'm glad I went all in on this. Because I think that's such a crippling feeling, is if you look back and you just have this regret of like the what if question is so scary.
Yeah. And I do think outside of that, like if you decide that this is what you really want to do, we talked about it, the industry's small. So like be your true, genuine self. Like you really have to be genuine. And whether we're talking about now, like as a teammate or as a coworker, be the person that people want to be around, because people find ways to make that person stay around and help you improve and teach you things. And if you're always the person that people talk about as soon as they leave, or try to avoid, or are worried about confrontations with, like, you're not going to have any long lasting stays at those kind of places. So try to, I know it's hard. I mean, everyone gets negativity in them, but like really try to like mitigate your negativity and be happy. And I think being happy and letting the small things roll off of you allows you to be genuinely more happy too. So sometimes it is like a fake it until you make it kind of situation, because it's like, this, maybe I spilled a drink or something and that bothered me, but it's like, man, I'm going to clean that up in 30 seconds. It's not a big deal. But if I let that happen and then I go home and I get stuck in traffic, and now I'm like, oh, and now I've hit every red light and now I'm stuck in this traffic. It's like you keep making these situations feel so much worse than they are. And that makes every small nuisance become like a huge problem. So you have to learn how to like let those small things, roll off you. So when it is something that really, takes more mental capacity to deal with, that you're able to do that and you're not just overwhelmed with, fear of doing.
It's that snowball effect, everything turns into a bigger thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that, when you were talking about doing this for essentially your life, right? Like you live, eat, sleep, and breathe paintball. It made me think of, I have a lot of people ask me like, hey, why don't you do like photography full time? Like, quit your 9 to 5 and do this, and, or do weddings. And like the thought of that for me is just like, no, like if this fun thing turns into like something that is responsible for my bills, I don't think I would enjoy it. And so that question back to you, how do you still find that enjoyment? Because like you need paintball to provide for your family. How do you balance that?
With fear of sounding cocky, like I'm a fairly intelligent person. I've always done well in school. I've always been able to, figure out a way when it comes. So I try not to dwell on it, because if I do start thinking about it that way, it could become an issue. You let that little thing in the back of your mind, and then it creates a little seed of doubt or worry. Like I kind of have to just kind of disregard it, honestly, and worry about a situation when it comes. And luckily I have a lot of skills in it, because I'm a lifelong procrastinator and things that I don't want to do sometimes. And I've always figured out ways to do them when I need to get them done in a manner that was well done and not just, anchored together. So I try not to think about it, but knowing that, I've created a lot of networks, I have other opportunities. I feel like that I could be successful in, but I don't want to, people always talk about having like a 5-year plan, a 2-year plan. Like I don't buy into it personally, because I think if you start, not that it's a bad thing, and it's just like we talked about earlier, it's the way different people's brains work. Some people need that to know what they're working towards. But like the way my brain works, it's like foot in, foot out kind of situation. And once you're willing to take one foot out, you should take both feet out.
Yeah.
So I'm not there yet. And so I'm just going to continue to go 2 feet in and letting action speak louder than words, I guess.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great answer. That's kind of the approach I've always taken to. It's like everything that I've ever got involved in, whether it's, paintball or the podcast, like it's never like, oh, I'll get like the rental stuff, or I'll get like the cheap camera. Like, no, I'm going all in on this. And there's just something about when you do that, like you're making, I don't know, it's like maybe it's a sacrifice, maybe it's a promise to yourself. But like I think it helps drive you internally even more to like prove it to yourself that you can
Yeah.
do it or that you want to do it.
Yeah, I've kind of been the same way in a lot of things, and
Yeah.
when the things don't work out, you're like, "Oh, why did I spend so much money on that? I've done that
Exactly.
like
You kick
one
yourself
time."
after.
But when it's something that you want, you're so happy that you didn't have to, keep upgrading it and do those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Like I didn't grow up wealthy or anything. My family was like steadily middle class, and like my dad told me something when I was really young that I still remember. It's always like, if you're not rich, you can't afford to buy something junky. So,
Wow.
like, I don't know if he even like thought much of it when he told it to me, but like, it's something that I've always had in the back of my mind.
Isn't that crazy? Like just one
Yeah.
passing
Yeah.
comment for him, probably like it
Yeah.
stuck with you. And wow.
And that's how it is when we speak to anyone. So it's like, when you're having a 5-10 second conversation with someone, or it's someone you just met the one time, or it's someone you've known your whole life, words are important because they stick
Yeah.
with people. When you can have a truly heartfelt message, and it might not have even been heartfelt from you, but if someone receives it that way, like if that's what just hits all their buttons just the right way, like a
Yeah.
symphony, like attacking your ears, you're like, wow, that's so important to me. And maybe they take it a way that you didn't even mean it, but what's important is the lesson that they learn from it. So it's like,
Yeah.
you have to choose your words wisely, and really be accountable and responsible for everything you say when you open your mouth, no matter, if you're speaking in a public forum or to just one person.
Yeah. I mean, especially in today's day and age, right? Where like social media is everywhere. Like everyone's always either live streaming or they're taking videos or something. And so the chances of somebody not hearing you is greater than somebody hearing you. Maybe I have that backwards. And so like your words are impactful.
Yeah.
Like talk to me about that, because you had mentioned no social media, throughout some of your career, and now it's literally everywhere. Like you look in the pits and you've got camera guys like me, you've got video guys, you've got guys who have their cell phones that are sticking it in. So like you are just surrounded by it. What is that like for you as a player?
It's pretty exciting, like I always like it as a player because so much of my early career is just like lost, like
Yeah.
great tournaments, great games, great that. So it's like I appreciate the time and effort someone's using their skill set to, capture these moments. For one thing, like everyone involved is doing the thing that they love, from the refs down to the people setting up the fields, the photographers, the videographers, the players, the pit crew, the fans coming and watch. It's like everyone's there to create this unique moment. So to have the ability to always have it captured now is special, and now we can create so many more stories, which can help paintball grow exponentially to me. When I was younger, like there was times where it felt like it was on that precipice, even from when I was a really young kid, like, I had subscriptions to probably like 12 magazines, I'm looking there was a lot of outlets there, but those were, long form. You're getting these 12, that's all that you can really look at. And that opinion was kind of like mainstream news used to be. It's like, this is gospel because this is the only take on that story that there is.
Yeah.
So in some ways, like the social media and the constant action and showing one thing 1,000 times gets repetitive, but at other times it's like, man, like now I can like form my own opinion on this or see it from a different perspective. And I don't mean just a mental perspective. I could mean like, a different angle of something that happened on the field, or a view from the pit. And there's so many more avenues to see this on, that you now miss more content because there's so much more content out there than we can take in, and trying to get in front of it all is hard. But if that's our problem, is that we're missing content that's out there, that's so much better than missing action that has happened that gets lost to history. I know you have a great relationship with Dynasty, and I've played some events with them in Europe and stuff too, but like really I've been their competitor for, decades, not teammates with them. And they are without a doubt one of, if not the greatest teams that have ever been around. But so much of that gets kind of who they became now. And I think that last run that they went on, that last run of greatness, was one of like the best periods that a team has ever had. But until they had that, like, man, I think the debate for who's the greatest team was a lot more open than people give it credit
100%.
for, because I think Dynasty's legacy got like built up around what I like to call is like the lost years of paintball, right?
Yeah.
When the NXL came in and Penny Marshall and Dick Clark created a media blackout for us, you had the top 10 teams in the world, at least, 10 out of the top 11 teams in the world on their own stage that wasn't allowed to be filmed. No pictures were taken. All of that action was lost. The things that happened there were lost. So, and now there were still videographers out there. People were still making films. What did they see? They saw Dynasty winning 15 events a year because they were playing against Bad Company in the finals, or they were doing this. And I'm not taking anything away from those wins, but it's the same thing when I look at like the old truck at Smart Parts, like the back door that had, Dynasty always like, oh, 50 wins. Like All Americans had that before too. And I'm looking at like 5-man, like Fox Hill wins from like 1993. But I'm like, is that much different in that time frame than the way Dynasty was winning? And now I think to prove my point some is like when they did come to the NXL, when the NXL opened up, when Excessive and Dynasty came in, everyone just assumed that they were kind of going to beat the shit out of everyone. And, it took Dynasty probably 2+ years to win an event. It took Excessive a year and a half, or at least the greater portion of a year to win an event. And like, that very first Texas, that snowy Texas in 2006 that it opened up, like we won that event. And that was a special event for me to win because on Sunday, we went through Excessive, who everyone said was going to beat all the other pro teams. We went through Dynasty and beat them, I think, like 13-2. And that was like at one of their peaks. Like hard to say that they weren't some of the best players at the time. And to beat a team like that 13-2, you don't see scores like that really anymore, right? Then we went on and beat the Russian Legion, who were dominant at the time, and then beat Trauma in the finals, who had just won the NXL a few months before that, right? So that's like a hard Sunday to prove yourself win. And that was like my first win. So it's like, well, this was all happening every event for those past years. And yes, the media coverage wasn't there, but the opportunity to win wasn't there either because we weren't allowed to play other leagues. We weren't allowed to play other events. So we had the chance to win once a year. That's what we could add into our resumes. And Dynasty was winning 14 out of 15 events, playing against lower talented players and getting and not only that, it's like I said, like all of the videographers, and I think media in general kind of has a slight West Coast bias because a lot more creative content comes out of the West Coast. So they're going to follow their local teams more and the following grows more like that. And it's especially been like that in extreme sports from skateboarding to paintball, however you want to boil it down. So not only that, now you have all these videographers writing articles, taking pictures for one team now instead of breaking that team across. So when all these kids were growing up, they all did have Dynasty posters on the wall and they all did watch Dynasty DVDs because all they did and all that they could read about was Dynasty beating the crap out of everyone.
That's all they had.
Now their tenure and their longevity speaks to them as individual players and it speaks to them as an organization and being able to go through a slump. Like I remember in 2015, after that year, everyone's like, oh, Dynasty's done. All those dudes should retire. I'm like, no, they're just it's hard to win in this game. There's a lot of good players and a lot of good teams. And we've diluted our game down to such a short game that's, really a one mistake thing leads to these wins and losses. Now before
detrimental,
we're playing 2 25-minute halves. You could have more swings that way. But now you don't have that. So you have to mitigate your mistakes as much as possible. And you can go on a drought. That doesn't mean that the players in the team aren't good anymore. It just means that maybe that they have to fight against something in their confidence and break through that, get a little bit of momentum going again. And you saw that happen. And then they kept up that momentum to, like I said, have one of the best winning streaks ever, definitely for World Cups, but in general, one of the best 4-year stretches that any team's ever had. And to me, that has more cemented their legacy more than the time in the past when everyone said that was already cemented.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to look at that. I don't think I ever really sat back and thought about the media side of it for the past, I guess the early part of their run. And now that I'm involved in the media, you're right. Like on NXL weekends, some of the morning games, it's kind of a ghost town, right? Like, the media is hiring other people or other teams, but when you get later in the day, you'll see more media come onto the pro field because those are the teams that are going to get the views for them. They're going to get the clicks. They're going to get the more of the following. And so, yeah, that's an interesting way to look at that.
Yeah, so if you looked at the league right now, it'd be basically like chopping off 10 of the top 11 teams and saying you can't film them ever again.
Yeah, that's
It's
crazy.
it's crazy. It's
Yeah. Wow. Speaking of heat and legacies and whatnot, I think a lot of folks have, well, they wrote off Houston Heat, I think, this year, right? Because you guys lost a huge chunk of your roster and some of the core players on your team. What was that like for you, going through that from a player with your tenure and also working in the industry too?
Mhm. That's tricky because I don't think our expectations were very high going into this year, but I also don't think we've done anything to really speak against that yet because I think we have a lot more in us to prove. But going
Yeah.
back from that, making those changes, like I've been on Houston Heat since now 2014.
14, yeah.
We don't make many changes, maybe a player here or there. Randy is extremely loyal, and that's good for a lot of reasons because we're also not a team that's, all living right in the same region. So, building up that trust and body language and belief in players over time matters a lot too, because your cohesiveness on the field isn't dictated by, X amount of layout weekends. It's
Yeah.
dictated by X amount of decades played together, right?
It's a family at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And that word gets overused a lot. So
Yeah.
I try not to do it in paintball, but it gets overused because a lot of people treat it like their family. Like you're spending such quality time
Yeah.
with the individuals around you. And whether you're in a lower division, spending a ton of your money to do it, or if you're not and you're getting, your expenses covered or whatever your case may be, like you overhear family because it is true. People have to treat this like a family or else they wouldn't be involved in it because they're not
Yeah.
doing it for the monetary reward. They're doing it for the bragging rights and for
That's a good point.
doing something special with your friends around you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So when you think of Houston Heat, do you
Oh
look at
yeah.
them as a team, or do you what do you define your team as? Because some people would say family.
Yeah, family. I really do. And that's good and bad, right? Like you don't love everyone in your family at all times. You rub each other the wrong way sometimes, or
Yeah.
you do something that's disrespectful, but it's a family because that's the way you have to work around and that you truly have to have each other's back. So
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, I lost my train of thought, but like following up on your question about like how it was to make that change, it's hard because you built such relationships with the people around you, but our change was kind of built out of necessity because we've underperformed for, post COVID. We've won one event. So it's been like 3 years, 3.5 years since we won an event. That's crazy. I've never gone that long without winning an event. So we're constantly underperforming on Sundays and losing 1 point matches. And you think it's like, man, that's such a small margin. Like that's easy to overcome. But like the
Yeah.
more it happens, the harder it is to overcome because like whether it's doubt that creeps up into someone's mind or
The
someone,
pressure.
the pressure for sure. But like sometimes people react differently to pressure, you might be the kind of person that's like, I don't want to mess up because we've been losing on mistakes of one person, right?
Yeah.
But if you have anyone on the field thinking that way, now instead of 5 people looking for opportunities to win, every person that's thinking, I don't want to be the person that messes up, reduces your chance of winning. So if you have 3 people sitting around doing that, and I'm not saying anyone on our team was, but if in any moment you have 3 people doing, now you're relying on 2 people looking for opportunities. And the opportunities don't always present themselves to them, and they might not always make the right decision. So what you really need to be successful on Sundays, like prelims are a different story. Like the best teams are using them to,
Figure
as
out.
practice, as not to figure out, but not to show off some things, to figure out different ways to a lot of times we scrimmage against, 1 or 2 teams at most. So you're playing against different play styles, really just shaking out how it plays slightly differently at the tournament,
Yeah.
and getting on the same page and building that confidence into Sunday so that you can then on Sunday have 5 people on the same page, but also 5 people that aren't afraid to take risks, that aren't afraid to lose a game because they're trying to win a game. And the more you lose, the harder that is. And confidence is one of those special things. It's not that special, actually. Confidence is like a lot of things. It's hard work to get and easy to lose.
Yeah.
And once you lose it, it's even harder to get it back. So it's important to be like, really be super hypercritically self-critical. Like you have to, and know when it was just a one-time mistake or if it was just bad luck, and be honest with yourself, because you can't say everything's bad luck. But you have to know when you made a mistake and improve upon that and not make that same mistake again. And you also have to know when something just didn't shake out some way, or if a team just beat you, that is what it is too. So you have to let that roll off of you. And not saying any of our guys did it, but like after not winning in that amount of time, we needed to make changes. And some people left, some people got replaced. And what I'm really happy with is, I didn't know the Blast Camp guys that well outside of, playing against them a couple of times or hearing Ronnie talk about them. But it's been really cool having younger players on the team again, for one, because I like teaching, because I think selfishly, one of the best things I get out of teaching is learning more, because it makes me be more critical on a situation, or have more thought-provoking exercises in my own head how to break it down. Because if I'm going to be explaining it to someone else, I better be right about it. So now I'm thinking about, a lot more situations in that way. So I think that helps. But it's really important to have people that, have that fire and drive, that weren't all around each other, that didn't grow complacent as a unit to push you, and then you to push them, and then grow together. And I think already, like I said, our results have been disappointing. We lost another 1-point game in Tampa, and then last event, we missed the cut, and that we definitely, I think, we're the team that had made the most cuts without missing one. So it was hard missing that cut, and played a bunch of 1-point games, and we lost 2 of them and we won 2, and we're close though. And what makes me excited about these guys is I think our communication on the field is already better.
Yeah.
And to have better communication at this early of a stage with, 35% of your team changing, that's pretty astonishing. So I'm happy to do that and build from there. And I told them all when they came on the team, I went, don't think about how we've done in the past. And I know that's better than how you've done. So you might be already thinking, oh, the 5th place is good, or this or that, or can't think that way. But you also can't think I have to come in here and change that, because we're not the same team anymore. So we have the opportunity now to be whatever we want to be, to all not only buy into the system, but have our hands in baking it, building the system ourselves the way tailor-made to fit this group of individuals. Yeah. So I think high end, your upside is way better, even if people want to say if you look at just individual talent or something, a lot of people would say that, we went into this year a lot weaker than we were, but I don't look at it like that, because when you lose a player like Tyler, who people consider one of the top players in the league, Fedorov, who people consider one of the greatest players ever, Connor, a young and up and coming player, and pick up people from, a team that was almost relegated. It's hard to argue that. But when you look individually, I disagree to a lot of extents. And I think, but the real important thing is how people come together to make a team, and how that they can make each other better. I've always been a proponent of I'd rather have the worst player in the league on my team if he makes everyone 5% better than the best player in the world who makes everyone 10% worse.
Yeah.
And that happens. And that same person who made people worse could go on another team and make people better, because you have to have cohesion between mentalities and thought process. You have to buy into a system. You have to believe in it together, from the coach to ownership to the coach down to the players. Yeah. Everyone has to be on the same page. So it was sad seeing us not be successful in the last years, because I knew that that's what broke apart our family. Right.
Yeah,
totally. But that's sports. And if you're not successful in sports, you get replaced. And or something needs to change, right? Which is why we had coaches changing before players changes, because it's easier to change one coach and a system than it is to figure out which pieces in the system are broken, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of growth that we have to do, but I think we have a ton of potential, and I'm excited to, be doing something from a different mindset and with a group of people that I think can be extremely successful together.
Yeah, I think you said the key word there is excited, right? And I saw that from, being the cool part about being a photographer or anyone that's involved in media is you get to be around the team in some of the most intimate moments at events. And it's you kind of get to feel that energy of the team, right? And being around you guys for the past few years, I could feel the energy. And like with the squad this year, it's totally different. And it reminds me a lot of like your story this offseason is really similar to like what Dynasty went through, right? Where like they obviously lost Marcelo, lost Chris, and it's like everyone's like, that's it, they're done. They bring in Kyle Berry, bring in Joe Barrett, some younger talent. Everyone's still writing them off, but for some of the older folks, it's like, no, it reinvigorates them, like it re-energizes it. And so what you're going through with Heat, I see the same thing. Like some of the older guys, like it's re-energizing you, like you giving back and teaching them. It's helping hold yourself accountable more now because you've got to hold yourself accountable to what you're teaching.
And yeah, it does give you a huge chip on your shoulder because when you talk about a team like Dynasty or us, like, yeah, we know we're losing great people, but we also know that we can field a team we can field a roster of players that have won MVPs, Golden Guns, that have won series championships across multiple different formats together, have won World Cup championships together. That these are the players that have been on the field with each other already that are still around. So when like one good player leaves and that's the end of them, like all you're doing is telling a bunch of people that know how to be winners that they're not good enough. And that's crazy to do. You don't want to give those people that motivation. And that's how I looked at it with Dynasty. I mean, when you look at like Ryan and Alex and Yosh, and in my opinion, Blake is one of the most underrated players in the league. And I thought he was criminally underutilized on Dynasty in the years past. So it's like sometimes I saw people leaving. I was like, well, that's going to give Blake more opportunities.
Yeah, watch out.
And I know that they're going to be successful because I would almost put Blake on the field over most people because he plays a lot the way I think I like to play. And I don't know if I do or not, but like you might get a bad here or there. But if you do it enough, you're getting way more benefit than like he's willing to roll the dice. He's willing to take a chance. So he might get shot stupid and in the first point. But then he might win you the next six. And if you're on a good team with a good roster, it's hard because you also have to, mitigate your mistakes because as a coach, it's like, well, I'm not playing this person already. I have other people. And if you're going to go out there and do that, maybe you shouldn't go on the field again.
Yeah. Points are premium.
Yeah. So now the coaches are thinking about that. The players are now thinking about how their coach coaches. And you just want to avoid all that. But when you have a player like Blake and you have people leaving, I was like, he's going to be forced into a role that he gets more spins. And because of that, he's going to get in the zone more. And it's not even that he has to be in the zone more. It's just that over time, statistics prove out.
Yeah, totally.
So,
yeah. And like bring it back to you guys, when I had Ronnie on a few months ago at this point, he and I were talking about it. Like the story, it's not about the guys that left. It's about the guys that stayed. Mm-hmm. Tyler.
They get to go create their own news stories on their teams. But that's not our story anymore.
Yeah, you guys get to like turn the page and start a brand new chapter, and like you get to now write it. And like that's some of the coolest things that I love to hear is, you staying. I'm sure Ronnie got some offers, like him staying, and then now you guys get to continue that nucleus of Houston Heat and really continue growing that brand.
Yeah, and it's a huge opportunity, like I said, for us to excel in, and if we're as good as we think we can be, and if we know the things that we know how to fix what's wrong, then we'll be successful. And if we aren't, then we're proven wrong and we'll be replaced too.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you said like people get cut and coaches get cut. Like, even though it's a sport and there's family aspects to it, it's a business at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And if you're not performing, you're spending a lot of money to not perform.
Yeah, and I don't want to like touch on too much of like the Marcelo controversy or anything, but I will say that like when I look at that, like that's the business aspect of it. Like I would never, regardless of how I feel about the situation, there's two things that don't bother me. It doesn't bother me that Impact chose to let him go because that's their business. They have to decide when he's a liability instead of an asset, and that's all that businesses come down to. And I'm happy that the NXL didn't do anything about the situation either, because we're not their employees, we're their customers, and that's just how it is. So I don't think stores, I know that they can legally, but I don't think companies should ever penalize customers for things they do outside of the premises. But I think businesses have every opportunity to penalize an employee for something that they do outside, because you're a part of their image and they get to decide if they like that or not.
Yeah, that's a great way to, and I wish some people look at not even just the Marcelo thing, but just as paintball as a whole, as have a reminder of, hey, this is a business, and when you are a professional player on a professional team, you are signing a contract to be employed by that team. And so you are representing their brand, and they get to, I'm sure there could be an at will something in all of your contracts that say at any point they can make that decision to move on or cut.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in sports, you almost don't even have to have that baked in because
Yeah.
it's performance based, and that's can be an eye of the beholder. It's kind of,
Yeah. Numbers don't lie.
no.
Yeah.
Numbers can be skewed any way you want, though.
That's so true.
They can be skewed any way you want.
Yeah, especially like in today's world, like with AI, you can
Give me the number, give me any group of numbers, and I can make it say what I want it to by just leaving out other important details. But
yeah, totally. So obviously retirement isn't on your radar in the next 2 years, but when it is, we'll call it 20, 30 years from now, when you finally hang it up, what do you want to fill up your time?
I guess I'll say that too. Like for me, it's not on my radar, but a couple things would change that. If I no longer had the drive and passion that I have for it, if I could no longer perform on and off the field where I thought I was an asset, or, if I was forced out because of an injury. Outside of that, like I want to keep going with it. But the most important thing for me is, being able to after I am finally done is, spending quality time with my family and being able to provide for them. However, that has to be whatever way I have to do that. I have a 3-year-old daughter now, and it does change your outlook on a lot of things. And, I have a beautiful wife that's always been very understanding of me doing what I do, and that's special. So you just want to give back to the people that believed in you and were there for you in any way that you can. So spending my time, I mean, that's easy. There's so many, I like life. I like to do things in life. Like I've never been like, oh man, like outside of not having the money to do something or something, that doesn't even matter. Cause like I can go outside, go on a nice hike, dude. Like I just enjoy living. Right. Yeah. So I'm never really worried about filling up the time, because I do think like you have to stay busy to stay healthy, and that's mentally healthy or not. That's why a lot of times you see people that work their entire lives and doing one thing, when they retire, they degrade so fast. It's because they no longer have like a purpose or a mission in life anymore. Yeah. But I think if you don't put your whole the onus of your life on a job, and you care about other things outside of that, and involve yourself in other hobbies, activities, likes, interests, then you'll never be bored, because you can always, and like, man, we live in an age where the access to information is unending, right? It's infinite. So it's like, if you want to learn something, you can learn it. Before, you had to read a book if it was written about the subject, and trust the person that wrote the book, and be able to retain the knowledge. And now it's like, if I want to learn something, if I have the interest and desire to learn something, I can learn anything. So
in seconds.
It's like, so don't ever be like, oh, I wish. Man, you can do whatever you want. You can learn whatever you want. And life is becoming less and less about, your degrees, and more about your capabilities. And the more technology improves, the more that's going to be true. Some of the most successful people I know in life are successful in things that they might have had a degree in something else, or no degree, but they had a passion for something and they learned it the hard way. And now they're working at, Fortune 50 companies and doing things like that. And the ability's there to learn now. So we have to take advantage of opportunities. And I think it's so hard to think like, what am I going to be doing in 20 or 30 years? Because especially with AI, like, I don't know what 20 or 30 years is going to look like,
Yeah, no kidding.
Like sometimes 20 or 30 years looks like the present. And then there's some periods where 20 or 30 years changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when flight was invented, when electricity was invented, when the internet was invented, like there's such jumps in some 20s and 30 years. And I think AI especially has the preponderance to make a bigger jump than we've ever seen before in that. You kind of have to roll with the punches, because any plans you have, like, there's no way that they're going to be what they were.
Yeah, no one knows. Like it's funny you mention that, because as you were talking about what it's like or what it's going to be like, for some reason I flashed back to 20 years ago, before we had smartphones and whatnot. And I had the thought of like, man, people that are playing professionally, like there's no texting, your teammates, or like, jumping on a Zoom call. Like it's all, you've got to call the home phone or like a landline, like, hey, coordinate practices. Like that had been such a whole different era back then, besides, just all jumping into a text group now and figuring it all out.
Oh yeah, meeting people, not deciding when you had to leave, like traveling. Like I started traveling the world way before we could have internet anywhere. So like just like, hey, we're gonna meet here, do this or do this, but you just have to be willing to like go with the punches and change your thought process and do whatever kind of the situation dictated to you.
Yeah.
And really appreciate the time, because the time that you did spend with them was all present time. Like I
Yeah.
say the same thing about team or family. Like when you're there, like spent, it's not just about being around someone, it's spending quality time with them, right?
Yeah.
And that allows the separation when you're apart to be good, because you're excited to be back together. If you're taking advantage of each other's time, or you're not respecting each other's time, then people don't want to spend that same time around you, so they want you to be gone instead
Exactly.
of wanting you to be back, right?
The reverse of it.
Yeah, so it's even in family life's like that too. Like, and obviously, I'm 40 now. Like, I've had that conversation with my wife a couple years ago. She's like, "Well, how many more years do you think you have left?" And I explained to her like the same thing. It's like, until I can't anymore. And is that partially selfish? Yes, but man, paintball is also what made me the exact person that I am, the person that you love. And
Yeah.
what am I going to be like without it? Like, yeah, I hope great, but I don't know.
Yeah.
This is what you love about me. And the last thing you want is me to resent you for having to give up something that I love.
Yeah.
And then the onus is on me to reciprocate that understanding with, spending the most quality time I can with her and my daughter when I'm there, being present, not taking advantage of the situation, and putting more effort into when you're home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what yeah said when I had him on, is because we talked about that. Obviously, he stepped away to pursue more of his off the field career, right? And it sounded like there was a little bit of struggle there of like, man, I kind of miss it, but like the thought of being with my family on those weekends is incredible, but also not being with my paintball family, like there's two different sides of it, you know.
And I
Um,
do think it's important for couples, especially, but you could say teams too. It's like, you don't want to spend every waking moment in something. You want them to have interest in your hobbies and your interests. And it's great if you have shared interests. You have to have some alone time too, because if
yeah,
not, the little things that they do, the mannerisms that can nag on you, and then you can start resenting someone for something that they were completely unaware of, or to no fault of their own, that shouldn't normally
yes,
bother you, but you allow it to bother you. And that's how like true friendship is too. Like, like we're coming up on, 5 years of Tim passing, and he was, one of my best friends, and traveled the world with him, and no more stories about that dude than probably, almost anyone. Cause I spent like, a lot of formative years, and we grew together doing the same thing everywhere across the world.
yeah.
And we were the same way. There was times, like I said, we were together 6 weeks doing everything together, right? Like, sharing room.
It
And
forces
the
vulnerability.
more there is to that, and just bored of this same conversation or the same this, and you
Yeah,
want to find ways to entertain yourself, and you pick on your best friends like more than you do people you don't like, because you can be
yeah,
honest with them, and the buttons to push that bug them even more. So there's times with like your best friend, if you're around that long, it could be the person that you like spending the most time with. But if you're around long enough, you want to punch him in his nose. And it
yeah,
comes to that. It's like, listen, you have to shut up, you have to leave, or we are fighting. You get to
yeah,
decide, but it's going to be one of those things. And obviously, like domestically, you don't want it to be like that. But the same things will happen with, resentment and not liking someone, because their little idiosyncrasies will start bothering you if you don't have some time apart. And the time apart makes you appreciate the time together so much more.
yeah. That's it right there. Is that time apart just makes you like fall in love, is such like a cliche thing to say, but like it makes you appreciate it, right? Like it's, I know for when my local guys are not at the field every weekend, like if they're off with vacations or whatnot, when they come back, like it's just like we're so excited to see each other, right? You feel like time is just gone, and so yeah, I totally understand that and resonate with that.
Yeah, live in the moment. Quit thinking about the next thing that you're going to be doing and doing. Just enjoy the moment, the present, and get the
Yeah,
most out of it, because those are the things you're going to remember, and those are the things people are going to remember about you, is the special moments you get to share with them.
yeah, love that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not always a grass is greener.
It's not, yeah. Speaking about people remembering people for something, whenever I think of you, I think of the USA headband. And like for people
Mhm.
that are not watching on YouTube, if you're listening in, like Ryan's got this beautiful USA flag in the background. Um, Tell me, like, what's the deep love with the flag? Because we have so many cool companies out there,
Mhm.
HK or Mises, that are making killer headbands. And like you always use the USA one. What's the story behind that?
It really boils down to, I have a deep love for the country, and it's not the governance of the country or anything like that. It's the idea that our country was founded upon, right? Like I think our founding fathers at such a young age were so impressive in how they structured a constitution that could stand the test of time. And it's, we have these unalienable rights. These weren't given to you by us, by you. They are innate, they're God-given, however you want to say it, but we'll allow you to govern if you like stand by these and follow these. And does the government always? No, but that's the idea behind it. And that's the idea that, brave young kids fought for.
Yeah.
And whether you're talking about fighting from freedom from England, fighting, in the Civil War against ourselves, going into World War II, and like both my grandfathers served in World War II.
Wow.
One in the Army and one in the Navy. One fought, a lot of the skirmishes around the Battle of the Bulge offensive, and the other was in the Navy in the Pacific. And, these are kids having to do unthinkable and see unthinkable things and live in these conditions and make decisions with no knowledge of the truth and with no experience. And they're expected to go and fight for a country, right? And fight for an ideal. It's not fighting for anything but for the belief that you have in it. And that's special. So like, obviously wearing an American flag to me is just an homage to all the brave men and women who are willing to put their lives on the line to preserve the very thing that allows me to do what I love. And it's such a simple like thing. It's not giving back or anything. And I think it looks pretty cool, but like outside of that, it's not giving back or anything. But when people see that, they understand that you appreciate that, or that you at least respect the same values. And a lot of people try to put like negative spin on like the flags and things like that, or a political ideology behind it. But to me, it's just a nation ideology of the principles that the nation was founded on. And it's not always going in the right direction, but it's important to remember what those are, because as a collective, we have the ability to change that. The government does work for us in those aspects. So that's why the flag in general.
That's cool.
As far as the bandanas, for one, they're light, they're thin, they're comfortable, they're easily replaceable. But I also really like to give them away, so I'll buy, a couple dozen every year and just hand them to people after I play. So I'm usually using new ones and stuff like that. So a lot of companies do make really nice headbands, and a lot of people have made me signature series headbands most of the time without even asking, and then they'll just give me one. I'll be like, oh, and then they're selling them, and I'm like, I appreciate it, because it's whatever. I don't really care. But it's not your style. A lot of them I would like to wear them, right?
Yeah,
to an extent. But then I like the ease and the approachability of a simple item like that. And headbands are so personal. It's one of the few things on us that rarely do you have to wear the sponsor's version of it. Maybe you can't wear like a direct competitor or something that's still happening, but you can still wear something comfortable. And I run hot, so a thin headband works really good for me. Thicker headbands and stuff, they do get, saturated after so much sweat and things. It gets heavier. And I really believe in the race car theory. I try to shave ounces anywhere I can. Go without a little protection to get a little more speed, a little more flexibility, a little more comfort.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I mean, when I mentioned that you were coming on the show, I had a bunch of guys in the Discord like, oh, you got to ask him about like the arm pads. And I'm like, everyone knows why, because he's trying to shave off as many ounces as he possibly can.
And I kind of play an unorthodox style, and it doesn't always look pretty, and it isn't always that, but like, I know what my body's going to be doing. So the way I slide and stuff is like I've done it for so long. I know which areas I can kind of protect and which I can't. Yeah. I was never the kind of person that's like, this is the right way to do it. Like, I saw this person do it, I'm going to go and try to emulate it. And a lot of that was, I started playing 10-man, and half the people still weren't shooting left-handed. So you got to, invent the way the game should be played. Yeah. You got to invent the game the way they should be played, the way you thought it should be played. So I didn't have to emulate anyone. So I grew a very natural style of playing to my own body and to my own mind and how it works, that personally, I don't need them really. And when I did go away from them, I just feel so much faster, so much more flexible. The ability, people say I'm not going to get bounced or whatever, but like, my profile is smaller on my arms when I'm snap shooting. I've been preaching for years, probably never see it, but we used to wear really baggy stuff, and some people want that to come back, but that was horrible. And the tighter stuff now is good, but back even when there was baggy stuff, I was saying, the first team that, basically wears morph suits with a pack stitched on is going to be so unbeatable, and everyone's going to make fun of them, but they're going to do it. And we're going to all look like bobsledders. And then everyone's going to have to do it because it's be so much better. And then slowly over time, paintball has done that with like the joggers and this and that. No one's done it to that level.
Yeah.
But
somebody will.
Someone should.
Yeah, totally.
Someone should.
It's those things that, just like you said, right? Like your philosophy is, it's those small little details that will give you like 1% more over your competitor.
Yeah.
And
like you've seen, like paintball in slow motion, I think should teach that to people a lot more, because the difference between making something on the break, you're usually seeing a paintball go a millimeter in front of someone's face, a half an inch over their pack, right in front of their knee. Like when you're watching it in slow motion and seeing the hecticness and the chaos that is around, it's like, yeah, every little fraction does count. It doesn't have to be a percent. It can be one small iota that helps you one time a year, and it's worth it.
Yeah, and that could be the one thing that makes or breaks a Sunday, or makes or breaks a tournament or World Cup, or for anything for that matter. And
it could be a Friday game that maybe if that wouldn't have happened, you didn't make Sunday, that you don't get to have that good success story and win the tournament and then get more confidence and then know what winning's like and continue to win off of it. It's like small margins, man.
Yeah, that's what it all is.
Tricky business.
Yeah. Man, Ryan, this has been awesome, and I think you and I could talk all night. But as you know, I think you've listened to a few shows. We always end the episodes with a last question, and I've got a good one for you. This is from Meter. Nice. I had him on last week, and his question for you, without knowing you were going to be on, is, and this is great because like paintball's been your whole life. He says, if you never found paintball, and he was like, you can't cop out. So if you never found paintball, what do you think you'd be doing right now with your life?
That's hard. I haven't had to think about that for a while, because you have to think about the start of your journey and where it would have changed.
I mean, you've been in paintball more than you've been alive than you have been, right?
Oh yeah, way more. Yeah. I've been playing since I was 12 and I'm 40 now. So
so it's been part of your life more than it hasn't.
So that's tricky. I'm super competitive. I always like sports, so I'd like to think that I could have been successful in another sport, but especially back then, there wasn't a lot of room for 5'10" and a half white dudes in many sports. Maybe I could have been good at lacrosse or like ultimate frisbee or something. But like, when I was a kid, I had the same dreams as anyone. Like be a professional athlete, be a pilot.
Sport?
I mean, I wanted football, but I wasn't built for it. Yeah. I was fast too. I could have probably worked into track, not as fast as I used to be. Injuries pile up over the years, and so does age. But I was definitely fast as a young kid. I mean, I don't know. At a pretty young age, I was interested in physics, and I have a pretty mechanical mind, so I could have seen myself maybe going into engineering actually, and pursuing that. So I could see myself, I don't know what field of engineering or whatnot, but it's hard to say. That's cool. I know that's a cop out, but like,
no, man, I don't think it is. Because, like when you talked about your role with DLX and like everything that you have to do with the marker and like the small things, like I kind of went right to like, that's your brain. Like you're having to break down so many different small details to manufacture and engineer it.
Yeah. And in school, like a lot of times, like I do my electives as using like architecture classes, things like that. I like building things. I like knowing how things operate from a base level to a more complicated level. So probably something to do with that. Who knows? Because you could have an idea of what you're going to do, go to school for 8 years, and then still end up in such a niche of that industry that you would never been able to even know it existed, let alone explain it when you started out on the journey.
Totally. Well, give yourself some credit. That wasn't a cop out. That was a good answer. So now the pressure's off. You get to ask a question to next week's guest without knowing who it is. Yeah.
So I'm going to hope it's a paintball player. They all have been. It could be someone in the industry, I guess. Selfishly, I'd like to know what they want to get from the sport. What do they want the sport to give them? What kind of things? And as a second part to that, when they're done with the sport, whether it's a playing or a non-playing role, like what do they want to have left the sport?
Wow.
So selfishly, like what do you want to take from it? and what are you willing to give at the end of it?
Wow, that's such a good question. I'll tell you when we get off air, but like if schedules line up, the person that could answer that question, I think it's gonna hit home for them pretty deeply.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, cool. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. For everyone else, like please go over to the Rowdy Ones podcast and subscribe. We got to get you some more love. Like,
and comment too, because if you don't like it, let us know. Like, we're just trying to grow and learn, and any feedback's good feedback, especially at an early stage.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, from one podcaster to another, thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate it, and really excited to see your success both on the podcast and what you do visually and creatively as well. So
yeah, appreciate it, man. Well, I'll see you in a few days here in Ohio. It's going to be crazy out there.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, everyone else, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda podcast. We'll catch you next time. See ya.